Well, earlier today I spoke to Amy Scobee, who spent 25 years in the top ranks of the Church of Scientology and has written a book about her experience called Scientology Abuse at the Top. She joined us from a studio in Seattle. Amy Scobee, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the allegations in Steve Kinnane's story focus on Jan Eastgate. Just how significant a figure is she in the Church of Scientology?
Jan Eastgate is a very important human rights activist within Scientology. In fact, she's the president of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights International. So her role within Scientology is very important, and the fact is she's been provided and granted the Freedom Medal within Scientology, which is a prestigious award for her actions along the vein of standing up for human rights.
Were you shocked then to hear that these kind of allegations could have surfaced about someone so senior in the church hierarchy?
Unfortunately, I wasn't shocked, and the reason why is because there's policy within Scientology about not exposing, not creating bad public relations outside of Scientology. And in fact, it's a high crime to speak out about Scientology, and like the whole mission as a Scientologist is to gain acceptance. So if she or anyone is reporting serious situations within the church, then it's going to create bad public relations, and something like that is really looked down upon within Scientology.
Yes, you mentioned high crimes. Now, there are a list of high crimes set out by L. Ron Hubbard himself. They're sort of commandments, do not do this. Amongst them are do not make public statements against Scientology, or hostile testimony against Scientology, or public disavowal of Scientology. Does this create a kind of atmosphere or culture of denial?
It really does. It's a mindset within Scientology, and it's actually very dangerous, because you will turn a blind eye or somehow brush things under the carpet, that should actually be dealt with, like, for example, the situation that we have on our hands right now that's being exposed. And I would also just really like to acknowledge the people that did come forward and speak out, because it is not usually very safe to do so. People who are exposing situations in Scientology are sometimes, confronted with threats of lawsuit and private investigators on them and all sorts of different things to try to keep them backed off from exposing crimes within Scientology.
Well, let's talk about what you exposed, because as you've heard, ex-Scientologists in Australia are accusing the church of covering up sexual abuse. Now, there are parallels here with your own story, because you've written about being raped by your 35-year-old Scientology boss when you were just 14.
I was 14 years old, yes, and no authorities were informed of the situation, and my parents weren't even informed at the time. In fact, they only found out because they read my recently released book, Scientology Abuse at the Top, where I cover the story, and that's how they found out. At the time, it was something that was handled within, like, this is when I learned at a very young age that Scientology handles its own, and we don't go to the authorities or anything like that on such matters, because it would create bad public relations. So that person that was responsible at that time did not get any, handling aside from whatever was done internally. In fact, I found out from my stepfather, who just recently had heard about the situation, that terminal was put into the position of the ethics officer of the Scientology organization shortly after that incident. So that's how Scientology treated the severity of that situation, not at all.
This was Darryl, the then 35-year-old man who raped you. He was promoted to ethics officer, is that what you're saying?
That's correct. He was a 35-year-old married man, and he had been the academy supervisor, and later on, after that incident, he was put into the position of ethics officer.
What happened to you? I mean, this never went to the police, I take it. So what happened to you? How were you dealt with by the church authorities when these allegations, or when it surfaced that you actually had been raped?
What happened was that they put myself and that person into what's called lower conditions. And what that is when you do something that betrays the group, you're assigned a condition of treason, and you work through steps to make amends, and that's, you make amends to the other staff members within the organization by staying up late and doing filing or doing whatever.
So
I was put into...
sorry to interrupt you. As a 14-year-old, you were held equally responsible, were you?
Yes, that's for sure. I was, put into the condition of treason, and then I was transferred to another local Scientology organization so that we wouldn't be in the same area, but we were still, none of the authorities were told or anything.
What happens to members of the church's elite unit known as the Sea Orgs? And I think you were one of these. What happens when you break those L. Ron Hubbard commandments about speaking out or disavowing the church?
Well, that's considered a high crime, and the punishment for a high crime is a suppressive person declare. So you will get an issue put out on you internationally that's supposed to be issued to all Scientology organizations and missions around the world that labels you as a suppressive person, and that means that you can no longer have communication with any of your friends or family members who are associated with the Church of Scientology. You are indebted to the organization to pay back any money for any training or processing and counseling that you have ever had within the church, and a series of amends projects and different things that you're required to do to get yourself back into good standing with Scientology before you're allowed to have any contact with family members and friends that are within the church. And that can be pretty devastating for people. Like that happened to me, where I decided there was so much pressure on my mother to disconnect from me, and we've always been extremely close. And there was so much pressure on her that she had to make a decision between staying connected to me or getting a divorce from her husband, who was still on services within Scientology. And that was just devastating to her. And it got very serious. And I won't go into the specifics here, but that is the point where I made the decision that I was going to expose the abuse within Scientology and speak out. And I know that there's ramifications with that. I've been followed by private investigators. My family has been threatened with disconnection, and that the fact that they can no longer achieve spiritual freedom if they stay connected to me. They've put my name into a Freedom magazine, labeling me all sorts of different derogatory terms, and basically saying that I can't see what I saw when I'm exposing the abuse. And I did see what I saw, and I am exposing it, and it should be made known. And I am really grateful to the people who had the courage to come out and speak out and say what they experienced so many years ago.
The abuse that you're talking about is physical and verbal violence from the head of Scientology. Is that correct?
The leader of Scientology right now is David Miscavige, and he's a very abusive leader. He has committed assault and battery several times on senior executives within the Church of Scientology that I witnessed personally, and I have exposed that in the media and also in my book. And I have spoken out about this because it needs to be made known. The head of a religion should not be committing assault and battery on people who have dedicated their lives toward helping people. So it needs to be exposed, and he should not be in that position. So I am trying to make the information known.
There are calls in Australia for a judicial inquiry into the Church of Scientology. Do you think that would have impact beyond Australia? Would that have a global impact if there was such an inquiry?
I absolutely believe it would be. And I really appreciate the work that is being done by Senator Xenophon. I've been informed about the actions that are ongoing. I really think that it's important, and I do think it would have an impact internationally, because it will set a precedent on the fact that the Senate there is standing up and saying it is not okay to allow an organization under the banner of religion or quote-unquote church to commit crimes and to violate human rights that hurt people.
Amy Scobee, we'll have to leave you there. We've run out of time. We thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.